The last lens I want to invite you to try and bring to the text is something that might be different to what you're used to. It might be something which uh, might feel a little uncomfortable for those of you who've not thought about the Bible in this way before. But I really want to encourage you to consider this and to recognize that actually this is the way that I think the Bible has been engaged with for centuries, that we may have sometimes lost in the way that we've approached the text in the last 100 years or so. The Bible is not a flat book. It's not all the same. And we can't read it like a textbook or a manual. It's more exciting than that, actually. It's more intricate, it's more interconnected, it's more carefully crafted. I actually think of the Bible as a work of art. And I think for us to learn to engage with the Bible as a work of art really helps us read it with more confidence, with more expectation, with a greater level of appreciation, I actually think, for what it actually is. I think the reason why it's helpful for us to see the Bible as a work of art is because actually, if we go back to some of what we said earlier in when we looked at the Yahweh lens about it's all about describing who Yahweh is and trying to translate the experiences of God's people into theology and understanding of the God that they worship. The problem is, how do you describe a God who is infinitely other? How do you describe a God that you can never quite fully get your head around? Well, I mean, you're forced to a certain extent to use metaphors and stories and testimonies and accounts and observations and rely on the prophets and, through song and ideas like that. But we need to understand that actually God is fully contained, I suppose, within the scriptures. He's fully there to be found, but actually, our ability to write Yahweh, we can never fully contain that. Like, we can never fully wrap our heads around that. And that's why theology is a constantly evolving conversation. I actually think God has designed it that way, that we continue to seek after and pursue, and that he continues to relate to us, and we continue to discover more about what he is like over time. I mean, you ask questions about the New Testament. What does it mean for a God to incarnate? I mean, that has never been devised in like the rest of kind of religious history. So I suppose, you might look for proof, or you might share stories, and, you might question, well, why did God do this in the first place? Or what does it mean? Most of Paul's letters are about, what does it mean really if God died on the cross? What does that mean for us? And the New Testament is actually reinterpreting previous ideas that we get in the Old Testament, previous ways of understanding things. And it picks up on them and it riffs on them, and sometimes it reappropriates them and changes them. And actually artwork is much more like that. When you think about when you come before a painting, you can have 5 people looking at the same painting and trying to go, what is this about? And they may end up with 5 different interpretations. And actually, as they share, an idea may filter to the surface. Now, as I'm talking, you may instantly be thinking, well, isn't this just postmodernism? Does this mean that, there's no truth? And I don't think that's true at all. But I think it's helpful for us to consider truth in a slightly different way. Because sometimes when we use the language of truth, what we're after is, like a fact or fiction. And we're drawing this binary, which I don't think always exists. That art, I think that the idea of art bypasses a little bit. Look at these 2 images for a second, side by side. Which of these do you think is truth? In a way, they're both true. One is not more true than the other or less true than the other. The photograph of the lilies captures a truth about lilies that the painting can't. And the painting of the lilies captures a truth that I think the photograph can't. Or a slightly different question, which of these is more informative? Which of these tells you more about lilies? And again, I think maybe the question isn't an either or, maybe it's an and both. And both of these count as art, by the way. Both of these are images which require us to think and engage and question. But I do think there's something powerful about Monet's image, which, because we approach it recognizing it's art and expecting to have a conversation about it rather than as a photograph and expecting that to be a done deal, Monet's painting potentially invokes worship more, invokes engagement more. I think that's what scripture is designed for. It's designed to invoke engagement and discussion and debate and worship. It's designed to invite us into a conversation about who is Yahweh that's been evolving for centuries. One of my good friends likes to describe the Old Testament as kind of like Picasso. And I don't know if you're familiar with this picture. Take a minute to just look at some of the different aspects of what's going on in here. It's a really interesting surrealist painting. This actually represents the Spanish Civil War. And in some respects, it possibly captures the horror of what was going on as much, if not better, than a photograph or a newsreel of the Spanish Civil War. Certainly, your eyes will be drawn to different aspects. They will resonate with different parts. Some of you will be looking at shapes, some of you figures, some of you the shading. There's actually quite a lot in there, so it does require an awful lot of engagement. You need to take your time as you engage with different parts of the picture. I think we're better served in the way in our reading of the Bible if we view it as a gallery. So there are many different books or pieces of art. They're of many different genres or mediums of art. They're by many different authors or artists. They're from many different time periods or of different styles. They're influenced by many different cultures and circumstances or intentions. And they're all referencing, engaging with, and shaping a shared theology. As we read the Bible, it's like we're walking around a gallery, taking lots of different things in. And some of us may want to barge straight through the, Greco-Roman statues because they're not interesting to us, whereas others of us want to dwell there. And some of us don't want to look at Renaissance stuff because we find it boring. Some of us want to go straight for the modernist stuff, but actually we forget that actually the modernist stuff is sometimes growing the idea, is riffing on the idea, is even critiquing the idea. And actually, this is why I think reading the Bible is such a communal activity, is because actually different ones of us can bring different thoughts and expertise as we wander around the gallery. If, have you noticed this? I know this isn't really your thing, but can you appreciate that? We get to bring it alive to one another. But the other thing is we get to recognize that it's not a flat text that we just receive as a manual. It's something that we can begin to enjoy as an experience, as a journey, as something to be abided within, dwelt within, valued, chewed over, reflected on. What does it look like for us to apply this idea to the text? I think firstly, we need to we need to assume that the text sees itself as true. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the text is a one-size-fits-all or a single genre. So last time in the previous video, we talked about, reconsidering the genre of Genesis 1. By reconsidering that as poetry, it doesn't mean that Genesis 1 becomes more or less true. The text sees itself as true. It believes it has a valuable contribution to make to the evolving theology of God's people. It's actually a really necessary text. It sees itself as true, and we need to assume that whenever what we're reading, but we need to consider maybe, well, what is the writer trying to say? What are they not trying to say, even if someone else says it? So sometimes we like to read back through, Paul will make a comment about something in the Old Testament, and then we only read that thing in the Old Testament through the eyes of Paul. But what we've done there is we've failed to take this particular piece in the gallery on its own terms, because we've said that this one overcomes it. And actually, I think sometimes we need to allow ourselves to kind of go, okay, well, what's this artist on about? Here are some questions to ask then, applying the arts text. Why has the author written this? Who did they write it for? What does the author want me to think and feel? Are there other pieces on the same subject that look different? Think about the different Gospels or some of the kind of repeat accounts that we get between Samuel and Chronicles, or even between Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. What is behind the words? What attitudes, ideas, illusions are implicit in this text? My heartfelt hope is that you are able to view the Bible and read the Bible as something which is wonderfully creative, that invites you into conversation, that enables you to appreciate the fact that God has deeply inspired it, and that it has been very carefully compiled, and that there is so much creativity and insight and ideas and techniques that have gone into it. And I hope that actually, as you bring these different lenses, that it really does illuminate the text in a new way for you. I hope that you can enjoy taking your time strolling around the gallery, perhaps linger in some of those courtyards or hallways that you may have otherwise rushed through. And you know what? If you're not sure what value there is to be found there, take a friend with you. Take a group of you and stand there and kind of go, I look at a piece and go, I don't get this, but what do you see? And ask yourselves these questions. Okay, well, who is the author? Who do they produce this for? What are they wanting to make me think and feel? It's okay if actually you're reading something that makes you feel grossly uncomfortable. Maybe that was the author's design and intent. It's okay if you're reading something and it makes you feel angry or frustrated. Maybe that's the author's intent. Allow yourself to linger a little bit. Allow yourself to appreciate it as artwork. And allow this lens to shape how you engage with the text in front of you.